The cold expanse of space stretched endlessly in every direction. Stars twinkled in the distance, and the vast darkness of the galaxy seemed to swallow anything that dared to venture into it. It was here, in the deep and silent reaches of space, that a massive alien fleet drifted unnoticed. The Xyrex, a powerful and technologically advanced species, had been patrolling this sector for centuries. Their fleet was made up of warships of terrifying size and incredible power, ships that could level entire worlds in an instant. Xyrax, the captain of the lead ship, stood at the helm of the flagship Xirin, his dark, scaly face illuminated by the glow of the ship's control panels. His golden eyes narrowed as he scanned the vast expanse on his ship's main screen. It had been a routine patrol, with no signs of danger or anything out of the ordinary. Yet there was something different this time. The sensors on his ship had begun picking up strange signals, faint but persistent. At first, they thought it was just interference from nearby nebulae, but the signal persisted, growing stronger by the minute. Xyrax paced across the bridge, his sharp claws tapping lightly on the metal floor. His crew was calm but alert, working to decipher the source of the signal. They had crossed this region of space countless times before, and never had they encountered something so strange. The signal didn't match any known frequencies or patterns in their databanks. In fact, it wasn't even close to anything they had ever encountered before. It was unlike any communication they had ever intercepted. "What is it, Captain?" asked Zura, the ship's communications officer. Her voice was tense, betraying the unease she felt. Xyrax turned to her. "We're not sure yet," he replied. "The signal is not coming from any known planet. There's no record of anything being out there." His mind raced. Could it be a trap? A hidden enemy? But the more he thought about it, the less likely that seemed. The technology behind the signal didn't feel hostile, just unfamiliar. Xyrax looked at the star map on his console. His ship had traveled near this sector many times before. There was nothing here, nothing but the empty void. Yet the signal seemed to be coming from a planet, one that had been marked as nothing more than a barren world, with no signs of intelligent life. But the signal was coming from this very planet. It was impossible. He felt a sudden prickling at the back of his neck. Something was off. He could feel it in his bones. "Can we pinpoint the source?" he asked, his voice growing more urgent. Zara's fingers flew over her console, and soon enough, the ship's sensor data updated. She looked up from her station, wide-eyed. "It's coming from Earth, Captain. A planet that was thought to be uninhabited. The readings are inconsistent with anything we've ever encountered." Xyrax frowned. Earth. He knew of the planet. It was a backwater world, home to primitive life forms that the Xyrex had long dismissed as inconsequential. The humans on Earth had never been of interest to the Xyrex. They were nothing more than specks in the grand scheme of the galaxy, primitive and incapable of threatening their kind. So why, then, was their signal reaching across the void? "How can this be?" Xyrax muttered to himself, more to process his thoughts than to answer his crew. He had heard the rumors, the old stories of a human race with unexpected potential, but nothing concrete. He had dismissed them as legend. Yet here it was, a mysterious signal from Earth. Could it be a sign of something more? Something they had missed? Xyrax straightened up and turned to his crew, his voice firm. "Prepare the fleet. We will investigate this signal. I want full scans of the planet, and I want to know everything about Earth. If this is a trap, we need to be ready." The crew worked quickly, their fingers moving over their controls with precision. Xyrax watched as the fleet prepared for the unexpected journey. The Xyrex fleet had seen countless planets, each more or less the same. Some were rich in resources, others were barren, but Earth was something else. There was an undeniable feeling that something important was hidden there, something worth investigating. The signal couldn't just be a random anomaly. The Xyrex fleet began its journey toward Earth. As they approached, the alien ships entered the edge of the solar system. The sensors began to pick up strange energy readings, signals that seemed to flicker across the atmosphere. The closer they got, the more complex and powerful the signals became. It wasn't just a simple transmission. It was something far more sophisticated. Xerax stood at the forefront of his ship, watching the stars blur as they accelerated through space. His thoughts raced. He had made the decision to investigate Earth, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far greater than they realized. What if this was a warning? What if the humans were not as primitive as they had believed? "Captain," Zyra's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We're receiving an incoming transmission from Earth." Xerax's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment of truth. "Put it through," he ordered, his voice steady. A crackling noise filled the room as the transmission came through. The alien words were strange to the Xyrex crew, but there was no mistaking the tone of the message. It was an invitation to come closer, to learn more. But why would humans, a supposedly weak species, be sending such an invitation? And why now, after all these years? Xerax's mind raced. He had to find out what was behind this. This couldn't just be an accident. Something was happening on Earth. Something big. "We will proceed with caution," Xerax said. "But we are going in. Make sure the fleet is ready for anything." As the fleet advanced toward Earth, the strange signal grew even stronger. There was something about it that felt almost alive. It pulsed. It thrummed with energy. It was as though the planet itself was calling out, beckoning them to come closer. And then, as the Xyrex fleet entered Earth's orbit, something incredible happened. A massive shape appeared in the distance, something that had never been detected before. At first, it was a shadow in the void, a silhouette against the stars. But as the ships drew nearer, it became clear. It was a warship. The Xyrex fleet had expected to find a planet full of primitive creatures, nothing more than another small world in the galaxy. But instead, they had found something else, something far more powerful than they had ever imagined. The Sentinel, a massive warship, rose from the depths of Earth, its engines igniting as it prepared for launch. The Xyrex crew watched in awe, their eyes wide with disbelief. How could this be? A human warship, hidden away on a primitive planet, just waiting to be discovered. Xerax stood frozen on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the ship as it powered up. The energy readings were off the charts, far beyond anything the Xyrex had ever encountered. This was no mere ship. It was a weapon, a deadly force that had been dormant for centuries, waiting for this moment. And the Xyrex had unwittingly walked into its path. As the Sentinel slowly rose into space, the Xyrex fleet found itself on the verge of something far greater than they could have ever anticipated. They had come to Earth expecting to find an insignificant world, but instead they had found humanity's greatest secret, a legacy of power, of strength, of potential that no one had expected. The first human warship had awakened, and it was about to show the Xyrex just how wrong they had been about Earth. The Sentinel floated silently in Earth's orbit, its enormous silhouette cutting through the dark void of space. The ancient warship, dormant for centuries, now hummed to life, its dormant systems slowly activating as if responding to a call from deep within its metal heart. For the first time in millennia, humanity's forgotten weapon was awake. On Earth, within the underground command center, a small team of military engineers and scientists stared at the glowing monitors, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. They had long believed that this warship, buried deep within Earth's crust, was nothing but a relic of a lost civilization, a symbol of human ambition from a time long past. But now, the impossible had happened. It was active, and no one knew why. Is this real? Lieutenant Harper, a young officer, whispered, her voice filled with awe as she watched the ancient machinery come to life on the screen. "Real enough," Commander Park, the leader of the team, said gruffly. He adjusted his glasses and studied the data streaming in from the warship's systems. "The power readings are off the charts. We're looking at a ship that's 1,000 times more advanced than anything we've ever seen. It's as if it's been waiting for something." He paused, his fingers hovering over the console, the weight of the moment settling in. This was no ordinary discovery. Humanity had thought they were nothing more than a small, insignificant species in the universe, mired in conflict, struggling for survival. But this ship, it was proof that humanity had once been something more. Much more. "Send a signal to the command center," Park ordered, his voice steady despite the excitement building within him. "Get me every available scientist and military advisor. We need to understand what we're dealing with here." Meanwhile, above Earth, the Zyrex fleet continued its careful observation of the planet. The enormous ships, with their sleek, predatory shapes, hovered near the planet's orbit, silently watching the awakening of the human warship. On the bridge of the Zyren, Captain Zyrax couldn't take his eyes off the display. The readings from Earth were astonishing. The Sentinel was not just a relic, it was alive, and its power could be felt across the galaxy. Zyrax turned to his chief strategist, Vora, who stood beside him, eyes narrowed as she analyzed the data. "This is impossible," Vora muttered. "The humans, they have technology that is beyond anything we've encountered." Zyrax grunted in agreement. "I had assumed Earth was just another primitive world. But this..." He gestured toward the display, where the human warship now moved into position, its weapon systems coming online. "This is something else entirely." The Zyrex captain's mind raced. He had been in command of his fleet for decades, and in all that time, he had never encountered a species capable of such technological prowess. The Zyrex had wiped out entire civilizations without breaking a sweat, and now they were staring down humanity's secret weapon, a weapon that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. "This is not a coincidence," Zyrax said, his voice growing serious. "Someone must have known about this ship. Someone must have activated it. And if the humans have this kind of technology, they could be a serious threat." He turned sharply, his mind made up. "We need to investigate this. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Prepare the fleet. We'll make contact with Earth." Back on Earth, the warship systems were being activated one by one. The crew at the underground base worked tirelessly to bring the ancient vessel back to full functionality. They had no idea what they were doing. They didn't know if they were waking up a weapon or a tomb. But they were going to find out. Harper and Park stood in front of the command center's largest screen, watching as the warship's exterior came into focus. The ship was enormous, its sleek, dark hull gleaming in the pale light of space. Its design was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Smooth lines, sharp angles, and an intimidating presence that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. The entire ship seemed to hum with life, as if it had always been waiting, dormant, for the right moment to reawaken. "It's fully operational," Park said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "This ship could change everything." But as they watched, a warning light flashed on the screen. Something was wrong. The ship's sensors were picking up an incoming threat. "Commander, we got movement in Earth's orbit," one of the technicians called out. "Several large ships. They're not human." Park's heart skipped a beat. He turned to Harper. "What do you mean, not human?" Harper quickly checked the data. "They're massive, like battleships, but the design is completely alien. They're approaching Earth." The realization hit like a thunderclap. The Zyrex fleet. They were coming for the Sentinel. The warship was no longer just a forgotten relic. It was a key player in something far bigger, and it had caught the attention of a species far more advanced than humanity had ever known. Outside, in the cold darkness of space, the Zyrex fleet moved toward Earth. Their sleek ships, each bristling with weapons, formed a menacing formation as they closed in on their target. The Zyrex commanders, filled with both curiosity and caution, could sense that this was no ordinary world they had stumbled upon. They were about to make first contact with a species that had been hidden from the galaxy for centuries, and they had no idea what to expect. Zyrax stood tall, his gaze fixed on the vast expanse of space ahead. Prepare for contact. It's time to find out what kind of threat Earth really is. Back on Earth, the crew at the command center was scrambling to prepare the Sentinel for what they feared was coming. The ship had just reawakened, but now it was facing an unknown force that had the power to destroy everything they had ever known. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and they had no idea how to defend themselves. "Activate the weapon systems," Park ordered. "We don't know what they want, but we're not going down without a fight." The hum of the warship's power systems intensified as weapons powered up, and shields flickered to life. Humanity was about to face its greatest challenge, and they would need every advantage they could get. The Zyrex fleet drew closer, and the tension in the air was palpable. Both sides were on the brink of an encounter that would change the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The enormous warship Sentinel loomed in Earth's orbit, its massive form casting a shadow over the planet below. Inside the command center, the atmosphere was tense, every technician and officer on edge. The crew was ready for what might come, but no one knew just how intense it would be. The threat from the Zyrex fleet was now a reality, and humanity had just awakened a warship older than their wildest dreams. Commander Park stood before the main screen watching the oncoming alien fleet. The Zyrex ships were sleek and menacing, their dark hulls nearly blending with the cold void of space. The ship's weapon systems were active, and it was clear from their formation that they were preparing for something. The question wasn't whether they were coming to attack, it was when and how. Lieutenant Harper, standing at his side, looked at the data flowing across her console. "They've activated their weapons," she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "They're getting ready for a strike." A deep silence filled the room. The crew of the Sentinel had no idea how much firepower the Zyrex fleet could unleash, but they knew it was nothing like what Earth had ever faced. Harper swallowed hard. "Commander, we need to know what the Sentinel can do. We can't afford any mistakes." Park nodded grimly. The warship was a marvel of ancient technology, but it was still a mystery. Could it defend Earth against such a threat? Or was it just a powerful relic of a bygone era? "Start a full diagnostic on all weapons and shields," Park ordered. "We need everything this ship can give us." Suddenly, the comms officer's voice broke through the tension. "Commander, we have incoming communication. It's from the Zyrex fleet." The words felt like a bombshell. The Zyrex, a powerful alien species, had never shown any interest in humans before. Now, they were contacting Earth. A strange mix of hope and dread filled the room. "Put it through," Park said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. The main screen flickered, and a holographic image of a tall, imposing alien appeared before them. His skin was a deep blue with intricate markings running down his face, and his eyes glowed faintly. His presence radiated power and authority. "I am Zurax, captain of the Zyran fleet." The alien's voice boomed across the room. "You stand at the edge of your extinction, humans. You have awakened a weapon that should have remained buried." The crew of the Sentinel exchanged uneasy glances. Zyrax's tone left no doubt in their minds that the Zyrex were not here to negotiate. They were here to conquer. "We did not seek this conflict," Commander Park replied, trying to keep his voice calm. "We were unaware of the ship's existence. It's a relic from a time we don't fully understand." Zyrax's eyes narrowed. "Do not attempt to deceive us, human. We have scanned your planet. We know what you've awakened, and we know the power this ship holds." The room fell silent as the full weight of the threat settled in. The Zyrex were not just any alien race, they were conquerors. Their ships had swept through galaxies, destroying countless civilizations that stood in their way. Earth, for all its technological advances, was a mere blip compared to the might of the Zyrex. "We've made a mistake," Park said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "We've woken up the wrong enemy." Zyrax continued, his voice colder than ever. "Your mistake will cost you dearly, human. The Sentinel will be ours. We will reclaim it, and then we will erase your species from existence." With that, the hologram flickered out, leaving the crew in a stunned silence. The Zyrex fleet was not coming to parley. They were coming to claim Earth as their own. And the Sentinel was the key. Park's mind raced. He turned to the screen, his fingers moving quickly over the console. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. The Sentinel was powerful, maybe even more powerful than anything the Zyrex had ever encountered, but it was only as effective as the crew that controlled it. "We need to prepare for battle," Park said firmly. "But we don't know what these ships are capable of. We have to assume they'll come in full force." Harper nodded, already relaying orders to the engineering team. "We'll power up the weapons, shields, and targeting systems. It's going to be all we have." But just as the team began to work, the comms officer's voice interrupted once more. "Commander, we're detecting movement. Something huge." Park whipped his head toward the screen. Another signal appeared, massive and overwhelming. It wasn't one of the alien ships, but something much larger. The Sentinel systems had detected something strange in the distance, and it was coming closer. "Is it the Zyran fleet?" Harper asked, her eyes wide with worry. "No," Park replied, his voice tense. This is something else." The object was coming fast, cutting through space like a shadow. The crew watched in stunned silence as it grew larger, its outlines slowly becoming clearer. It was a warship of unimaginable size, dwarfing anything the Zyrex had sent. A single vessel, almost like a specter, appeared from the depths of space, its sleek form gliding through the stars. "What is that?" Harper whispered. "It looks like another ship, but it's not from the Zyrex," Park muttered. "That's something entirely different." Before they could process what they were seeing, the massive warship came to a sudden stop. Its surface gleamed in the light from Earth's sun, and every sensor on the Sentinel screamed danger. There was no way this ship was human. Suddenly, a transmission came through. "I am Captain Lyra of the Elysium," the voice boomed. "Humanity, you have unknowingly drawn the attention of the Ascended Fleet. We have no interest in your war, but if you are to survive this conflict, you will need us." Park froze. The Ascendant Fleet, a name he had heard only in hushed whispers, a legend spoken of by the most ancient texts, a fleet that was said to rival the power of the Zyrex themselves. "Prepare yourselves, Earth," Lyra continued, her voice cold. "The real battle has just begun." As the transmission cut off, the crew of the Sentinel was left in stunned disbelief. They had just been saved, but by whom? And at what cost? The first clash between the Zyrex and the Ascendant Fleet was now inevitable. Earth had been caught between two alien forces, and humanity had no idea what side they should take, or if they would survive at all. As the Ascendant Fleet hovered ominously above Earth, the atmosphere aboard the Sentinel was filled with a heavy tension. No one knew who the Ascendants truly were, or what they wanted. But one thing was clear: their arrival had shifted the balance of power dramatically. With the Zyrex now facing an unknown and seemingly more powerful force, the fate of humanity rested in the hands of the Sentinel and its crew. Commander Park paced back and forth in the command center, his mind racing with questions. He had no idea if the Ascendants were allies or enemies. The warship that had appeared out of nowhere had been powerful, its weapon systems unlike anything he had ever seen. And now they were offering to help Earth, but at what cost? "Harper," he called, turning to his second-in-command. "What do we know about these Ascendants? Can we trust them?" Harper, the ship's operations officer, looked at the screens in front of her. "Not much, Commander. Their ships are unlike anything we've encountered. Their technology is advanced, potentially more so than the Zyrex. But we don't know their intentions. They could be using us as pawns in their own war." Park nodded, his face grim. "And what's worse is we have no way of communicating with the Zyrex fleet. They're too far away. The only thing we can do is wait for them to make their move. And that's what worries me." Before he could speak further, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the ship. The Sentinel's internal alarms blared, and the lights flickered. A voice came over the intercom. "Commander Park, we have incoming fire," the comms officer reported urgently. "It's from the Zyrex fleet. They've launched an attack." Park's heart raced. He had expected the Zyrex to retaliate, but the speed of their strike was a surprise. The attack came without warning, just as the Ascendants had appeared. "Shields up. Activate all weapons," Park barked. "Get us in firing position. We have no choice but to fight." The crew scrambled into action, with weapons systems powering up and shields locking into place. The Sentinel began to move, its massive form slowly gliding into position, facing the incoming Zyrex fleet. Harper's voice was tight with urgency. "Commander, they're already closing in. At least 15 ships, and they're using their heavy artillery. If we don't respond soon, we're going to be overwhelmed." The Sentinel's weapons systems powered up, its cannons ready to fire, but Park hesitated. He looked at the screen where the Ascendant ship was still in orbit. It wasn't moving, almost as if they were waiting for something. Could the Ascendants be preparing to strike? Suddenly, the silence was broken by a transmission, and it wasn't from the Zyrex. A calm, composed voice came through the intercom. "Commander Park, this is Captain Lyra of the Elysium. We are prepared to engage the Zyrex, but we need your cooperation." Park felt a cold chill as the weight of Lyra's words settled in. "Cooperation?" he asked. "What do you mean? We can't just sit here and wait for them to attack. We need to defend Earth now." Lyra's voice was steady and confident. "We understand, Commander, but we're offering you something that will give you a fighting chance. We will provide you with advanced weaponry and tactical support. However, we need your trust and loyalty. The Zyrex are not just any alien invaders. They are part of something much larger, something that has been lurking in the shadows of the galaxy for centuries." Park's mind raced. This was a lot to take in. How could he trust these mysterious Ascendants who had appeared out of nowhere? But they were right about one thing. Earth needed help, and it needed it fast. "Do we have a choice?" Park muttered under his breath. Then, turning to the crew, he made his decision. "Fine. We'll cooperate. Prepare to receive their assistance. But we need to act now." The crew of the Sentinel worked quickly, coordinating with the Ascendants to prepare the ship for combat. Park watched the main screen as the Zyrex ships grew closer. They were ready to strike. Just as the first volley of alien fire streaked across space, Lyra's voice crackled through the comms once again. "Brace yourselves, Commander. The Ascendant fleet is coming in hot." In the blink of an eye, the Elysium, along with several other Ascendant ships, dropped out of hyperspace in a dazzling display of energy. They appeared in front of the Sentinel, their massive forms casting a long shadow over the approaching Zyrex fleet. It was a formidable sight, but one that filled Park's crew with hope. "Now, Commander," Lyra shouted, "we strike first." The Ascendant ships opened fire with unimaginable force, their weapons unleashing concentrated energy beams that cut through the Zyrex ships like a hot knife through butter. The Zyrex were caught off guard, unable to react quickly enough. The battlefield erupted into chaos as the Zyrex fleet scrambled to retaliate, but the Ascendant ships were too quick, too powerful. Meanwhile, Park and his crew fired up the Sentinel's weapon systems, targeting any Zyrex ships that managed to escape the initial barrage. The massive warship unleashed a volley of powerful blasts, each one finding its mark. The crew's nerves were on edge, but they held steady as the Zyrex forces began to fall apart. "Commander, the Zyrex are retreating," Harper reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "We've won the first round." Park allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but he knew the battle was far from over. The Zyrex had just been forced into retreat, but they weren't going to give up easily. As the last of the Zyrex ships fled, Park turned to the crew. "We've made it through this first battle, but there's much more to come," he said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us next." The aftermath of the battle left the Sentinel's crew in awe. Earth's first true victory against the Zyrex had come at a steep price. The warship had sustained damage, but nothing irreparable. The Ascendants, however, had offered more than just their superior technology. They had shown the kind of unity and discipline that humanity had never encountered before. In the Sentinel's command center, Commander Park stood, staring out at the field of wreckage left behind by the battle. The Zyrex fleet was in full retreat, but Park knew they wouldn't stay down for long. The Ascendants had helped them secure this victory, but they had done it for a reason, one that Park couldn't yet fully understand. "Commander, there's a message coming in from Captain Lyra," Harper said, breaking Park from his thoughts. Park turned, nodding. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and Lyra's face appeared, calm as ever. Her golden armor gleamed faintly in the dim light of her ship's bridge. She was every bit the seasoned warrior, her expression giving away nothing. "Commander Park," she began, her voice as steady as ever. "The Zyrex will regroup and return. But next time, it will be different. They will come with reinforcements. We must act quickly if we are to defeat them permanently." Park felt a chill run through him. He had no doubt that the Zyrex would come back stronger. But he couldn't help but wonder, why did the Ascendants care so much about a planet like Earth? It was a question that gnawed at him, but one he dared not voice aloud yet. "What do you suggest?" Park asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty churning inside him. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "We will teach you everything we know. Humanity has potential, but you need to evolve. Fast. The Zyrex are just one part of a much larger threat. The true enemy is still out there, watching." "Larger threat," Park repeated. "What do you mean?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "The Zyrex are part of a galactic coalition, a coalition that is preparing to invade Earth's sector. This warship and its crew will only be the beginning. Earth must be ready to face them all. If you want to survive, you must learn from us." The words hit Park hard. He had never imagined that humanity's battle against the Zyrex could be just the beginning of something much larger. And yet, here was Lyra, offering them the knowledge and tools to defend themselves. But at a cost. What was her true agenda? "How much do we need to sacrifice to get this knowledge?" Park asked, not daring to hope that the Ascendants were as selfless as they seemed. "Sacrifice." Lyra's tone was sharp, but there was a glint of understanding in her eyes. "You don't understand, Commander. The Zyrex are only the pawns. The true war is much older, and it is a war that will take everything. But we will help you, if you are ready." Park paused, his mind racing. Was humanity really ready to take on a galactic conflict on this scale? Did they even have a choice? As much as he wanted to refuse, deep down he knew that Earth's survival was at stake. The fight against the Zyrex was only the first step. "We're ready," he said, finally making his decision. "If you'll help us, we'll learn everything you can teach us. Humanity will not go down without a fight." Lyra's expression softened slightly. "I knew you would choose wisely. We'll begin training your people immediately." The transmission ended, leaving Park to contemplate the enormity of what lay ahead. Earth was no longer just fighting to survive. They were being pulled into a much larger conflict, one that stretched across the stars and involved powers far beyond their understanding. Later that day, Harper approached Park, her face troubled. "Commander, there's something you should see," she said, leading him to the ship's central data console. Park followed, his mind still spinning from his conversation with Lyra. What could be so important now? Harper gestured to the screen. "It's a message from Earth's government. They're requesting a meeting." Park frowned. The government had always been a step behind in these matters, reacting too slowly to the urgent threats. But now, they were asking for a meeting. This couldn't be good. "Put it through," he ordered. The screen flickered, and the face of Admiral Ross, a high-ranking officer from Earth's defense fleet, appeared. His face was grim, his expression telling the story of someone burdened by too much knowledge. "Commander Park, Admiral Ross began. "We've just received some disturbing intel. The Xerex may be planning something much more sinister than just an invasion. According to our sources, they've discovered a way to track your movements, even in deep space." Park's blood ran cold. "They found us." "It's worse than that," Ross continued. "They're not just targeting Earth. They're targeting the Ascendants as well. They know you've made an alliance with them." Park's heart raced. This was everything he feared. The Xyrex were ruthless. If they knew about the Ascendants, it meant they were already planning a counterstrike. "Then we have no time to waste," Park said, standing up straight. "We need to prepare, and we need to act now. We can't let the Xyrex strike first again." The days following the transmission with Admiral Ross and the Ascendants were filled with tension and urgency. The Sentinel's crew worked day and night, scrambling to make the necessary preparations. What was once a routine military operation had now escalated into a full-scale war effort. And the enemy wasn't just any alien race. It was the Xyrex, a ruthless and technologically advanced species who had the power to obliterate entire planets. Commander Park stood on the command deck, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the stars pass by. The cold emptiness of space seemed to mirror his thoughts. Vast, unknowable, and dangerous. The Xyrex were coming, and no one on Earth had fully understood the magnitude of the situation until now. Harper walked up beside him, her face pale from exhaustion. "Commander, we've finished analyzing the new intel from Earth. The Xyrex ships are capable of tracking us through the fabric of space itself. It's not just their sensors. They've developed a way to tap into our communication networks." Park nodded grimly. "So they know everything we're doing." "Exactly. And they've already begun to organize a new wave of attacks. The Ascendants are going to help, but they won't be enough to stop the Xyrex alone. We need more support, more ships, more manpower." Park exhaled slowly, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Earth's military was still recovering from the previous skirmishes, and the government had been slow to act. They had no idea what was coming. But now it was up to him and his crew to prepare Earth's defenses, and fast. "We'll need to act fast, then," Park said, turning to Harper. "Get me a full list of our capabilities. I want every ship and every resource Earth can muster." Harper nodded and hurried off to carry out the orders. Hours later, the Sentinel's bridge was filled with activity. Harper and the rest of the senior staff were busy coordinating with Earth's remaining fleet. Commander Park stood at the center of it all, his eyes glued to the data flowing across the holographic displays. A new transmission from Lyra appeared on the screen. Her calm, golden figure filled the room, standing in front of a massive star chart. "Commander Park," Lyra began, "the Xyrex are known for their ruthless precision. They will not waste time launching ineffective attacks. We have one chance to strike first, and we must use the time we've bought ourselves to our advantage. You will need to trust us, more than ever." "I trust you, Lyra," Park said, his voice resolute. "But Earth is still in the dark. We don't know what we're up against yet." Lyra's gaze softened, and her voice became more serious. "The Xyrex will not stop until they have exterminated humanity, but you have something they don't: the will to survive. That is your greatest strength, Commander. We will help you fight them, but you must prepare yourselves. The Xyrex are not like anything you've faced before. Their technology is beyond comprehension. But there is a weakness." Park's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of weakness?" Lyra hesitated, her face troubled. "Their central command vessel is their most vulnerable point. If you can disable it, you'll cripple their entire fleet. But be warned, Commander, it will be heavily guarded. The Xyrex will not let you near it without throwing everything they have at you." Park clenched his fists, determination flooding his veins. "Then we'll make sure they don't get the chance to stop us." Lyra's eyes shone with pride. "You have the heart of a warrior, Commander. That is the key to victory. But remember, even with the Ascendant's help, you will need to adapt quickly. Prepare your people for a war unlike anything humanity has ever seen. The transmission ended, and Park turned to face the crew. His gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of his team, Harper, Lieutenant Rhodes, and the others who had joined him in this impossible battle. We've been given a chance to win this war, but we're going to need to work together like never before. The Zyrex aren't just aliens, they're a force of nature, and they will not stop until we're gone. But I believe in you all, Park said, his voice steady and full of conviction. We've faced the impossible before. Now we face it again. And we'll win. Outside, the stars continued their endless journey through the void. But inside the Sentinel, the mood had shifted. No longer were they just a group of humans trying to survive. They were soldiers, and their mission was clear: to protect their planet from the wrath of a galactic power, and to strike back with everything they had. In the war room, Harper was already setting up a strategy. She was moving quickly, pulling up enemy ship schematics and analyzing them. Commander, we have reports that the Zyrex will be launching an assault on Earth's outer defenses soon. We need to take them out before they reach the planet. Park turned to her. What's the best approach? We'll need to attack from multiple angles, surprise them. If we hit them hard enough, we can force them into retreat before they launch their full offensive. But we'll need more ships. We can't do this alone. Park nodded, but his thoughts were already racing ahead. The Zyrex were formidable, but he wasn't about to let them take Earth. Not without a fight. And the fight would begin soon. We'll make it happen, Park said. Get in touch with Earth's fleet and rally every ship we can. I want a full assault ready in the next 48 hours. Time is of the essence. We take the fight to them. Now. As the crew dispersed to prepare, Park stood at the helm of his ship, staring into the depths of space. The true test of humanity's resolve was about to begin, and there was no turning back. The air was thick with tension as the final moments before the battle arrived. The Sentinel's engines hummed steadily, a constant reminder that the ship was ready, as were its crew. Commander Park stood at the helm, staring out into the void of space. The Zyrex were closing in fast, and their fleet was massive, far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, Park remained resolute. On the command deck, Harper, Lieutenant Rhodes, and the other officers moved in a blur, making final preparations. The crew worked in synchronized harmony, their movements sharp and purposeful. Every second counted. Commander, we've received the Zyrex's approach. They're 5 minutes out, Harper said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. Understood, Park replied, his eyes narrowing. Prepare the fleet. Everyone's ready, right? Ready as we can be. We have a small window before they arrive. After that, we're on our own. Park nodded, his gaze shifting toward the massive holographic display showing the Zyrex fleet. Their ships were sleek and deadly, their advanced weapon systems already taking form in the system's data. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, and perhaps outclassed. But they had one thing the Zyrex could never understand: the strength to fight for their home. Okay, team, listen up, Park called to his crew, gathering them around him for the final briefing. We don't have the luxury of time. We hit them hard and fast. We target their central command vessel, their flagship. That's where their power lies. And if we take it down, we cripple them. We fight with everything we've got. For Earth. The crew's resolve hardened as they exchanged determined looks. They knew this would be the fight of their lives, and there was no going back. The Zyrex ships emerged from the dark expanse of space, their sleek, metallic hulls gleaming with menacing precision. Each ship moved with a kind of synchronized grace, as if they were a single entity, a living, breathing army that could not be stopped. Opening fire in 3, 2, 1, Harper called out. The Sentinel and the rest of Earth's fleet unleashed a barrage of weapons. The first volley of missiles launched from their battle stations, sending shockwaves through space as they rocketed toward the incoming Zyrex ships. The battle was fierce and unforgiving. Zyrex ships retaliated with terrifying precision, unleashing energy beams that ripped through the darkness of space like lightning. The Sentinel shook under the blast, but Park refused to falter. "We've got this," Park shouted as he watched another energy beam strike the ship's outer hull. The damage report came in, but it was nothing they couldn't handle. The crew worked with incredible coordination. Lieutenant Rojas was at his post, navigating the ship through a web of enemy fire. Harper was already locking onto the nearest Zyrex ship, preparing for another round of missiles. As Park watched the battle unfold, his thoughts briefly turned to the Ascendants. Lyra had promised to help, but even their advanced technology could only go so far. They were outnumbered. The only thing that kept him going was the belief that humanity, even in the face of insurmountable odds, could do what no other race had ever done: stand its ground. "Target the flagship," Park ordered, voice steady as steel. "We break their command, we break them. All ships, converge on that vessel." The fleet followed his orders with swift precision, the ships moving as one, drawing closer to the heart of the Zyrex formation. Their flagship, a monstrous vessel shaped like a jagged asteroid, loomed ahead. It was surrounded by layers of defense, but the Sentinel and the fleet had one advantage: speed. "Ready the final strike," Park commanded. The Sentinel powered up its main weapon, the energy cannon designed to pierce the hardest of enemy shields. "We only have one shot at this. Make it count." As they closed in, Park's fingers clenched around the armrests of his chair. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of humanity. The Zyrex flagship fired a deadly shot in their direction, but the Sentinel veered sharply, narrowly avoiding the blast. The energy cannon was now fully charged. "Now," Park barked. The crew fired the weapon, and the world seemed to slow as a bright, blinding beam of light shot forward, splitting the darkness in an explosion of raw energy. The beam slammed into the heart of the Zyrex flagship, and for a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then came the explosion. The flagship disintegrated in a burst of light, debris scattering in all directions. The Zyrex ships faltered as their command vessel was taken out, throwing their coordinated assault into chaos. "Yes," Harper shouted, her voice filled with triumph. The rest of the Zyrex fleet hesitated, their formation breaking apart. Without their flagship, their attack was no longer coordinated, and they began to retreat, panicked and disorganized. "We did it," Lieutenant Rodas cheered, her fingers flying over the controls to keep the Sentinel steady. But the battle was far from over. The Zyrex fleet might have been thrown into disarray, but they were still powerful. And as Park watched the remnants of their ships retreating, he knew this wasn't the end of the war. "Not yet," Park muttered under his breath. "The real fight is just beginning."